start the show today with a quick little history on Pérez. He was elected at Real Madrid in 2000 as president, using Luis Figo's transfer to earn a narrow victory over Lorenzo Sanz. And that was really the start of something that ended up being absolutely crazy. He won 2 La Liga and 1 Champions League title with a star-studded squad featuring Figo, Zidane, and Ronaldo during a 6-year tenure. Pérez then stepped down as Real Madrid president in 2006 after consecutive trophyless seasons, but he returned 3 years later, starting a new era by signing Cristiano Ronaldo, Kaká, and Karim Benzema. His revamped Real Madrid side went on to win 4 Champions League titles in 5 seasons, led by Ronaldo, Benzema, Bale, Modric, and Kroos. And then the Renaissance. He launched a $1 billion Bernabéu stadium renovation, added 2 more Champions League titles to give Real Madrid a total of 15, and signed Kylian Mbappe. All right, Nico, we've had a lot of conversation off screen about this, but can you just kind of give us the 411 on really how Pérez changed the landscape of football as a whole?
Yeah, listen, in his first presidency, because like you said, there were 2 presidencies of Florentino Pérez, but he really wanted to be that revolutionary figure, and he installed the Galacticos the first time out, and now he's doing it again. But the world had never seen in the modern age something like this. So when Florentino's running for election, he actually lost 2 presidential bids before. And finally, he goes up and he promises, hey, I'll sign Figo if I'm elected president. He'll elect me and I will bring Luis Figo, Barcelona's Golden Boy, Ballon d'Or, runner-up and captain to Real Madrid. All right, everyone's like, nah, this is all smoke. And when there were rumorings that it wasn't true, he goes, no, I'll bring him in. If I don't bring him, I'll pay for season tickets for everybody for the next campaign. And he ends up winning the presidential bid, ends up signing Figo, and that opened the door to Real Madrid signing all of these players for the next couple of years under his presidency. They won Champions League, but then the team got even better, right? They won the Champions League with Zidane, Makelele, Figo, and then after that, they signed the likes of Robinho, Ronaldo, Beckham, I'm thinking Julio Baptiste. I think you could rattle on the names. That part wasn't so successful. They didn't win as much as you would have thought. In the first iteration, it worked. But that really expanded, was the beginning of the expansion of the Real Madrid brand beyond the football pitch. What
does that say about Pérez, but then also about just Real Madrid to hey, we're going to try this again and see what happens?
Well, and it worked. You have to go back to why it failed that first stint. And for all the stars in the world, you still need the engine, right? And they lost their engine in Lahoud Marco Messina. He was everything to that side that won the Champions League in 2002. And when you have players that, defy logic in how you get the dream team, and we see all these players here. Lahoud Marco Messina, Zizou, Zinedine Zidane said this about him when he left and went to Chelsea. He said, why put another layer of paint on a Bentley when you're losing the entire engine of this whole project? Marco went on to win back-to-back Premier League titles and was Chelsea's gain and was Madrid's loss. Real Madrid, how many trophies they won after he left in those 3 years? No, 0, nothing. So it was a humbling moment for him where he had to put his ego, which is sizable when you're successful in that manner, when you have all the money in the world and you're successful as a businessman, and he had to go away and do some soul searching as a president to get the right balance back. He's still the Don, but he was too much at the forefront from a footballing standpoint.
There were also 3 different presidents during that time.
Big on him to resign, though, to step down and say, there needs to be a different direction here.
But I think he learned his lesson. And one of the reasons with Makelele, which was understood, was he didn't sell jerseys the way that the other players would sell jerseys, right? And he was underpaid for the value that he brought to the team. And I think that while it is not a success in terms of the amount of trophies that they won for the quality that they had, he also elevated them to an iconic brand. A brand that I remember witnessing as a young kid, it felt like Hollywood. It was all these superstars that trickles down and plays its role long-term for fans being generational Real Madrid fans, right? That go to the stadium and wear their jerseys. You can find the Real Madrid logo everywhere. So that was that era. But I think when he comes back and you think about 2009, which was Galacticos 2.0, if you want it, he understood the balance. He understood that for the Ronaldos that you had to get, they had to be hungry. You had to get a Xabi Alonso in the midfield. You had to find this way of putting a group together, a Benzema, that would complement each other, and then add a coach on top of it that could also keep the egos in check and get the most out of them. So for me, it's the evolution from what he learned to get there, but also look how many years we're talking about. 25 years is incredible to evolve. Look how much his football has changed even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the media landscape. So he's been at the forefront of all of these different things, and it's incredible the way that he's leveled up. I remember when Cristiano Ronaldo went to Juventus, there was some Juventus fans, well, it was an iconic transfer. They said, if we really want to change our club, we should get Florentino Pérez. He's the mastermind behind it. Instead of Ronaldo, that's how big he was.
You compare him to the other Real Madrid president that was just as great as him, which was Santiago Bernabéu. You might know the name because it's who the stadium is named after. He was the first one to really push the Real Madrid brand beyond the football pitch. He signed the likes of Ferenc Puskás, of Alfredo Di Stefano, and Paco Gento, who really created this mythical Real Madrid. They won 5 of the first Champions Leagues. But then speaking of that Champions League, the European Cup, they were one of the founding members of the European Cup. Europe was kind of splintered with very different political ideologies in the 50s, post-war. There really wasn't this unified sense in Europe, but football was able to bring that forward. So backed by L'Equipe, Real Madrid was on board as one of the founding members, and they established this European Cup, which was an ultimate success in the very first season. So now I understand why Florentino, who has already signed the Galacticos 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, has a part of the training facility named after him, redid the stadium just like Santiago Bernabéu did in his heyday. He wants to take this club into his next phase. That's going to be the legacy of Florentino Pérez.
Just one other thing, just to go back on the player signing thing, right? Because Real Madrid is in a category of its own. Usually, Premier League is the destination for most players. Real Madrid is that one team that you carve out. They say, all right, if the player wants to go to Real Madrid, we understand. We accept it. Trent, for example, is the one that you go to Real Madrid, you say, okay, you're going to the heights. So all of this thing that he built years before the destination, this to be the destination, the place to go, signing Kylian Mbappe on a free transfer, all of those things happened because Florentino set them to be this iconic brand. And just to get in a league of its own, for me, they are higher than Manchester United. They are higher than that Barcelona. They're on their own stratosphere.
So what's next then? What's the next evolution and phase? Because Florentino Pérez has shown he's been on the forefront of things for a long, long time, and that doesn't always make him very likable. We know the Super League, we'll get into that.
That's what he tried to do. That was the next phase. Yeah.
But it hasn't worked yet. Do you see a world in which that becomes a reality?
I'm not sure if it's going to be exactly what the Super League entailed, but he is obviously fighting on behalf of the brand of Real Madrid, nobody else. He wants to expand the brand of Real Madrid.
But it wouldn't just include them, it would include...
How do you make it sustainable?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's bringing in other clubs to create some sort of more robust financial standing for them going forward. And that being said, that Real Madrid, year after year, comes in a net positive, right? They're bringing in money, but they want to bring in more money because they're a generous brand. I don't know if it's multi-club ownership, if it's a different ownership model. That's on Florentino Pérez and his vision as to how Real Madrid can grow. I was listening to a podcast with Real Madrid members. Imagine, and this is kind of like just mere speculation, right? But it got the creative juices flowing. Imagine for me what it's like going in the mind of Florentino Pérez. Real Madrid teams, like mini Real Madrid teams, all over the world, like for Brighton, Union Saint-Gilloise in Belgium, right? And they have other clubs elsewhere. Or like a Red Bull Leipzig that has affiliates in Austria, in Brazil. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is for Real Madrid, but if you want like a more robust standing to expand that Real Madrid brand and keep on winning, he's gonna something different is gonna happen. It feels like we're so close to that happening. We just don't know what it is.
So for you guys, and I think we started having this conversation. I'm curious where everyone on this desk stands. Is Florentino Pérez good for football? Not Madrid, but for football.
For me, yes, because he's brought football to places and he's inspired young kids to want to watch football by the teams that he's built. So for me, I would say that he is. A lot of kids, they see the superstars that he's able to build, and football's everywhere that we go. That you just mentioned that you could go in Central America, in New York, everybody's a Real Madrid fan. So that's the perspective that I would take on it and say that he's good for football.
And you know what is most impressive? That a guy like Cristiano Ronaldo, who is extremely marketable, extremely powerful, that is almost his own brand, is able to leave Real Madrid. Real Madrid doesn't enter a crisis moment. They find a way to rebuild themselves and keep those fans in a day and an age where it's so many young fans want to follow the superstars, but they still stay fans of Real Madrid.
And Real Madrid got better.
Yeah. And
Real Madrid were able to elevate and to continue pushing on. And I think Ronaldo thought that he was probably should have been the show. And Florentino Pérez showed once again that Real Madrid is bigger than any player, even if your name is Cristiano Ronaldo.
And like, that's such a hard thing to achieve. All right, Guillem, great to have you on with us today. I just want to start there with the stadium renovation. Why was this so important to get done for Florentino Pérez's legacy and just everything that he's done with Real Madrid?
I know you want to start with the stadium and the renovation, but you have to put his presence at Real Madrid in context. He wants to be the Santiago Bernabéu of this era. Santiago Bernabéu was, of course, not only the name of a stadium, it was a historic chairman of Real Madrid that had a vision of a club full of players who were local and some of the best players abroad, who embraced the European Cup straight away, and realized that there was something there that was unique, and then, of course, built the new stadium and bought as well land just a few meters away, which then eventually was sold and by Florentino Pérez, trying to reproduce the same idea, which is a new training ground inside the town, having sold the land of the training ground that allowed them to buy some of the best Galacticos around. So he took over a club that was in deficit, wasn't very well run. Perhaps the people, not perhaps, the chairman at the time just wanted to be famous and link themselves with Real Madrid. But Florentino Pérez had a vision of a club that will continue being the best club of the 20th century and be an example to many in the 21st century. So he's not only renovated the look of the club, including a new stadium. At some point, he was thinking of selling the land, will produce a lot of money, and take the stadium somewhere else. Decided to rebuild it, and it looks absolutely amazing. That's why he also wants to leave an imprint and a legacy by embracing what he thinks where football should go, which is the European Super League. So these are two men with a vision. And of course, for Florentino Pérez to continue keeping Real Madrid in that position, he needs to bring money, he needs to push on, he needs to make the club look bigger and, have everything in their power to continue to be one of the number one.
Yeah, Guillem, I think the thesis of our opening segment to the show, when we began talking about this, it was a little bit about everything that you're saying. The symmetry between Santiago Bernabéu and Florentino Pérez. Bernabéu redid the stadium. It's now named after him. He signed a lot of these players like Puskás, like Alfredo Di Stefano. Paco Gento became a massive figure in the club, right? And Florentino Pérez did that with so many generations of players. He's been there for so long. They've both won a lot. They've both expanded the brand to international levels. And then Santiago Bernabéu, along with Real Madrid, established the European Cup, right? They were one of the founding members of that tournament. And Florentino Pérez kind of doesn't have that next iteration. You alluded to the Super League, but what does a potential next phase business-wise look like for Florentino Pérez, be it in the ownership model, be it in a European Super League? Where do you see the evolution of Real Madrid and Florentino Pérez continuing?
Perhaps, Nico, we have to again take a step back and see that his legacy is the Galactico era, or the Galactico concept, which is a reproduction of what Santiago Bernabéu was doing earlier, and this idea of that he got from Disney, actually, of getting brands, players that were almost brands, big names themselves, put together to make the brand, the clubbing they were in, the shirt that they were wearing, even a bigger brand themselves. So he's reproduced that, and many others have followed that model. That model is, of course, a catch-22 because you bring better players, that brings more money, which can bring better players, and is a good vicious circle, if you like. But not happy with that. His analysis of football right now, and this is not just a businessman, one of the cleverest businessmen today in Spain. He's a 70-odd-year-old man as well, who looks back and thinks football needs a push. And I think we'd all agree with that, perhaps. Calendar has to be looked into. We have to attract new audiences, etc. He thought the best way of doing that, while keeping him and Real Madrid in charge of proceedings, is the European Super League. And this concept was very badly presented at the beginning, with him going into a television show in Spain and saying, well, we're going to do this, and wanted to front what it should have been a presentation with bigger names in a bigger place, in the bigger place that you could think of. And that basically killed the idea at the beginning. But there's been court cases that suggest that with the innovations that the Super League and the changes that Super League are introducing, including the fact that teams will go up and down, the redistribution of wealth, etc., means that the idea is not dead. But there is a clear engine of it. On one hand, Florentino Pérez. On the other, Joan Laporta, who is thinking £250 million just for participating in a competition. Yes, bring it on. But the vision, the big vision, is from Florentino. Momentum has been lost, and he's aware of it. But if you actually say publicly, the Super League is dead, the European Super League is dead, be prepared, as some of us got, a call from Florentino Pérez telling you, you are wrong.
You got a call from him?
Well, not true. And in fact, one of the interesting calls that he made was on the back of that presentation that we're talking about, where people thought this is not serious, and how the English clubs started to put out there that they were not interested, and yet fans went into the streets. And how the story tells all that is that the fans stopped football clubs getting to the European Super League. A call was at that point made from Florentino saying they have to step away from it, but those clubs that have shown interest in the Super Cup, I'm sure they will continue to do so. And in fact, they were legally bound to be in the Super Cup. They come out of that contract, but the idea is, I believe, is not that.
So on that note, and you might get another call from Florentino, depending on how you answer this, we had a debate earlier. Is Florentino good or bad for football? I tend to think that he's a net positive for the sport. Lahoud made valid points, the contrary. Where would you stand?
I love the expression net positive, and I would have never used it before in football or talking about a personality, but it defines very well what, in my eyes, Florentino Pérez is. And I know Tebas, for instance, the head of La Liga, will tell you that he's bad for football because he's trying to elitize or take football towards the elite and to protect the elite. But he's a visionary. And I've got a lot of admiration for people that go and say, I know you all do things this way, but how about doing it this other way? And actually proving himself right by the way that the Galactico model worked, by the way how he's competing against what he calls club states, backed with the king's money, kind of thing, or the sheikh's money, and that idea that is unlimited funds. How can you beat that? Well, Florentino has managed to do that. Others are trying, but failing at the moment. Barcelona, for instance, yes, succeeding on the pitch, but with huge financial debts. Manchester United. These are the three biggest clubs in the world in terms of fans and money coming in. And yet it's only Real Madrid that's doing things in a way that you could say they are competing with Manchester City or with Newcastle. So you have to give it to him that he's actually done that at the right time, helped a little bit sometimes with luck. COVID, of course, is not a lucky thing, but certainly in that period, he managed to restore, to rebuild the Santiago Bernabéu. It could have been a lot of money being lost with the stadium being closed. Instead, what it was a period to accelerate the work put in. So I'd say, what was it? Positive net.
Net positive, yeah.
Yeah. Guillem, I want to go back in time, and you've been there witnessing this evolution of football that is Real Madrid and Florentino Pérez. The first iteration of the Galacticos had mixed reviews, mixed criticism. He goes away from football, comes back, and they become a world superpower. What was the turning point for him as a president of Real Madrid that everything just clicked into place?
It's not easy because when they had the biggest names, they weren't succeeding. When he left, I think it was 3 years with hardly winning anything. And when he came back 3 years later, he realized he had given too much power to the players and needed to redistribute that. So players have been pawns for him. And what is put in front of our eyes is a winning project with winning players. The best players around, the winning players. The best managers around, they know how to put things together. He's found that out to win things, and meanwhile, financially, he's still in a strong position to still get in those players.
Guillem, great stuff. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. This was awesome.